Hello, I'm Michael Serapio. Well, Parliament's fall session kicks off on Monday, and CPAC's Primetime Politics will be back with a whole new season. And this year, well, we are introducing something new, a weekly podcast featuring three of this country's top political journalists: Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Globe and Mail, Robert Fife; Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Toronto Star, Tonda MacCharles; and Ottawa Bureau Chief for La Presse, Joël-Denis Bellavance. Hello to all of you, and thank you for starting out this new journey.
Well, it's very exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. Well, you know, an exciting... Again. Always exciting in Ottawa. But this parliamentary session in particular, you know, it does seem to carry some weight, heavier weight, because we've already heard the Prime Minister saying that a number of policies will be unveiled in the coming weeks and in short order. Bob, I'll get you to start us out here. Why is this parliamentary session, this fall session, going to be an important one?
Well, I think there are three main reasons. One, we are in a trade war with the United States, and we have no idea what the end result of that is going to be, but we've seen job losses in the Canadian economy. And Mr. Carney, who Mr. Elbows Up is going to be put under the spotlight from the opposition parties. What are you doing to resolve this trade war with the Trump administration? Second of all, the Prime Minister has promised the largest transformation in the Canadian economy since the Second World War. We're beginning to see the rollout of some of these national infrastructure projects. But, you know, he's going to be questioned about why isn't there an oil pipeline? Why didn't you put that on the table? So he'll be getting those kind of very specific questions. And in October, there's going to be a federal budget. And it's going to, you're going to see a redeployment of money away from the public service or some social programs, perhaps, into infrastructure and defense and national security. And there's going to be some serious questions to him about that. And remember, we're still in a minority parliament. We have no idea how this minority parliament is going to play out. The opposition parties are in charge of the Commons committees, and we all know from covering Parliament that the committees in a minority parliament have a lot of power. They can call whoever they want, cabinet ministers up, and grill them. And so I think it's going to be a pretty exciting parliament, because we also have a new Prime Minister who we only saw a little bit of him before the summer recess. And how is he going to perform in Parliament with all of these major challenges before him? Yeah,
major challenges, including Pierre Poilievre, who was not in the House of Commons post-election, but has subsequently won a by-election. So he will certainly play a factor once the House comes together. Tonda, when I put the question about the importance of this fall session, what comes to mind for you?
Well, for me, I'm looking to see how a minority parliament pulls itself together and mobilizes, or does not, if it gets jammed up in opposition tactics or government failure to meet their own promises. If it gets jammed up and fails to meet the challenges of the day. Everything Bob talked about, those big economic challenges are there. There are huge challenges in this country on the health and social safety net front. You know, there are great needs in the country that haven't been met for a long time. And there are huge global conflicts that will test any government and the opposition. So I'm looking to see how the minority parliament comes together to work or not work. Who's the kingmaker in this parliament for Carney to get his agenda through? Is it the NDP? Is it the Bloc? And how do the Conservatives under Poilievre position themselves, because they vowed to be a constructive, loyal opposition, and not just to oppose, but to propose? That will be a very interesting tightrope for them to walk, especially as Pierre Poilievre goes into a leadership review in January. So the dynamic in this parliament is going to be super interesting. I want to see if it can get its act together, because I think Canadians expect that.
Yeah, and dynamic as well, because you know, you and I were both in Toronto, where a different dynamic is brought up. You mentioned the fall budget. So important it's being called a budget already, not just a fall economic update. But we heard the Prime Minister basically prepare the country that is going to be both a budget of austerity and investment, which leads to a big question mark. What does that actually mean?
Well, yeah, because sometimes, most of the times, austerity and investments are opposite terms. It means opposite things. But in the same budget, we'll see how Mr. Carney can
Square the
Square the circle. Thank you so much. Because austerity means cuts to the public service, my sense is that's what it is, belt tightening, but investment in a strategic area, in defense, security, and also infrastructure projects so that we can export our goods to other markets than the United States, namely Europe and Asia. The Prime Minister was at his caucus meeting in Edmonton, and he made a call for unity, and that I did find interesting because so far he's been surfing on the anti-Trump momentum in Canada. It helped him get elected. That changed the election result, in my sense. How far that wave will remain for Mr. Carney, because decision times has come. And when you make decisions, you make people happy, you make people unhappy, and so you sort of increase the number of opponents, if I may say, in the House of Commons, yes, but also within Canada. So that may means the end of a honeymoon that he's been riding on for the last 6 months.
You know, and the honeymoon may come to a very quick end. We've got unemployment now of 7%. If we don't resolve this trade dispute with the Americans, we could potentially see 10% unemployment. And think about that for a moment. We've all been around when governments have had 10% unemployment. Their popularity goes down very, very quickly. And these projects that we have not seen all unfold here, they will obviously create jobs, but they don't come overnight. These things take time. So he's going to have a real challenge on that part. If the economy goes sour into a recession, we're tipping on the edge of it, and the American economy may go into a recession as well because of those crazy tariffs that President Trump has imposed. You know, we could be in a very serious. He could be in very serious political trouble.
And don't forget, the first Trump administration, when NAFTA was being renegotiated, the Liberal government of that day was a majority government. Now we're facing much higher stakes. The tariffs are much higher than he had imposed at that time, which were only on 2 sectors, steel and aluminum. Now we see a series of sectors affected by tariffs, and about to launch, as Mark Carney tries to navigate the next few months, is a review and possible renegotiation of that deal once again, but in a minority parliament situation. So we've already heard the Bloc Québécois set out some parameters, things they don't want to tolerate. And the backdrop of the next year, by the way, is going to be the Quebec election next fall. And that is going to put a lot of, I think the debates we hear in the context of, is it good or bad for sovereignty, Quebec sovereignty, that is, not Canadian sovereignty, and how that plays out for the Bloc.
Same thing in Alberta. I mean, there is a movement in Alberta that, wants a pipeline. The government wants a pipeline. If Mr. Carney does not put on the table a project to build a pipeline, that could fuel,
Well, he needs a company to propose a pipeline first,
that's
and there's no pipeline proposal.
Although we know that Danielle Smith has been actively speaking with oil companies, but I will also say
But she can't change the economics of building a pipeline and whether there's a business case for it.
There's a business case for natural gas pipelines, but there isn't a case for oil at this point.
Yeah, so something we're watching. I will add to that, though. When we heard, for example, Leger Marketing, who appeared for the cabinet last week, and we've seen it in other polls as well, the priorities also shifting. You talk about elbows up with Donald Trump. Well, now the priorities are shifting once again to affordability and housing, which is really much more in the purview of Pierre Poilievre and the campaign that he was fighting on versus Donald Trump. So it'll be interesting to see how that makes its way through the House and Parliament as well.
Will come back as a top priority for Canadians. And Bob mentioned, watch out if we have employment at 10%. It's already the case in some city. Windsor is at 10% right now.
Hamilton is in rough shape.
Also, it's in rough shape. Ontario is in rough shape. So that's the demands for maybe programs to support those workers and the companies that are suffering because of the tariff war. The demands will be increasing on the federal purse, and that means what? A deficit of $100 billion this year. That's being talked about in some circles. So the magnitude of the deficit, I think, will also fuel the discussions in Ottawa. Maybe give new ammunitions to Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative Party leader.
Well, as I say, an important parliamentary session, and happily, the three of you will be joining us on a weekly basis, and we'll be covering it right here for you on CPAC, on Primetime Politics, and the respective news outlets of our guests today, Bob, Tonda, and Joël-Denis. Thank you for that. And of course, we will have now this new weekly podcast, a preview of which you just heard right now. The Bureau Chiefs with Michael Serapio will drop every Friday of the parliamentary session. We look forward forward to you joining the discussion. Until then, take care.